From a strategic point of view, we should thank our lucky stars for the fact that insane and polarizing SJWs exist and spend their time tearing into these radical centrists, skeptics, enlightened individualists, or whatever they like to call themselves, instead of the people who create new alt-right recruits every single day. Balkanization helps our cause and undermines the soft, squishy, let's all get along center. Huh, I wonder who wrote this. Well, I guess that answers that question.
I think it's time to blow this scene. Get everybody in the stuff together. Okay, 3, 2, 1, let's jam.
Peterson, do you have any comments on the Nazi presence at your protest?
In the past 2 years, the Canadian psychologist and academic has been adopted as a hero of the Donald Trump-loving alt-right.
Why do you think it is that so much of what you say is so very popular with the alt-right?
Jordan B. Peterson has been described as one of the most influential thinkers of our time, but also as an alt-right figurehead who spouts conspiracies.
The presence of Nazis and white supremacists assaulting people at your protest, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I don't like Nazis.
You're just saying things, though, to provoke, aren't you? I mean, you are a provocateur.
I never said
You're like
anything.
the alt-right that you hate to be compared to. You want to stir things up.
This picture of you with behind the pet, is that you?
People associate you with pandering to like white supremacists, or worse, I've even seen the suggestion that you are a white supremacist.
So this is the Pepe flag, which I'm sure you know is seen by the left as a hate symbol. And
are you worried at all that you're sort of attracting a crowd that you might not want to attract?
This is an alt-right hand symbol, and here you are.
The Canadian psychology professor who has risen to the top of the alt-light heap.
Jordan Peterson, I mean, like, he's a guy who basically, he got internet famous and became the professor of the alt-right and like logic pedants online.
A journalist named Steve Kovac wrote a story for Business Insider. His first public interviews were to Stefan Molyneux and Jordan B. Peterson, far-right figures who have built up large followings on the video site.
But when you start to become branded by particular avenues of the press or media as things like, I mean, there's so many that I've read today, but the one that sort of seems to sing out to me is Belle of the Alt-Right. How do you feel about that moniker?
I find the tale of Jordan Peterson to be one of the most fascinating. One group of people claims that he is a racist, misogynist bigot who wants to bring us back to a time of racial and gender inequality. Yet another group of people claims everything he says is boring, obvious, generic, self-evident self-help advice. You can be forgiven for wondering how it's possible for a single person to embody both the spirit of one of the greatest evils of modern time and that thing that everybody knows, so why waste your time saying it? Now, Jordan Peterson is by no means a perfect individual. No one is. Well, no one three-dimensional anyways. And when people honestly engage with his thoughts and ideas, there are interesting discussions that can be had. However, it rarely gets to that point. For more often than not, media critiques of him are instead filled with either flat-out lies or misrepresentations. This happens with such frequency that simply pointing this out is considered a meme by Peterson's detractors. Now, the claim against Peterson I want to focus on today is one of the big ones. Does the alt-right love Jordan Peterson? Briefly, I have to define what the alt-right is, since that term is thrown around so easily nowadays. The alt-right is a very loosely organized group of people who have various beliefs on many issues. However, they are unified by one thing: the desire to have a white ethno-state. That's it. So if you don't want a white ethnostate, you're not alt-right. It's that simple. Now you'll notice that most of the publications focus on this idea that the alt-right loves Peterson, not that he is alt-right. They do this because Peterson has repeated time,
I'm not an admirer of identity politics. You know, the radical rightists are playing identity politics just like the radical leftists. They just say, well, yeah, the world is divided up on racial grounds, just like the radical leftists claim, and I happen to be white, and I'm going to win this game. And my injunction to the radical right types has been, don't play the game at all. You play the game of the individual. Set your own house in order. Don't fall prey to that racial idiocy. We already did that in Nazi Germany. It didn't work out so nicely. We shouldn't do that again. And I've had thousands of letters from people who were tempted by the blandishments of the radical right, who've moved towards the reasonable center as a consequence of watching my videos and listening to what I have to say.
And time.
Having the right degenerate into identity politics does not seem to be a positive solution. So one of the things I would say is that, like, I understand why the identity politics that has been practiced so assiduously and so devastatingly by the left has been co-opted by the right. I understand that. But then here's what I would say to the people on the right who are playing that game. If you play the game of your enemies and you win their game. You don't win. That's not victory. You just become the most successful exponent of their pathology. Well, so how is that a good thing? It's a bad thing. I don't think that the Caucasians, let's say, should revert to being white. I think that's a bad idea. It's a dangerous idea. And it's coming fast. And I don't like to see that. I think the whole group identity thing is seriously pathological, where we're making your group identity the most important thing about you. I think that's reprehensible. I think it's devastating. I think it's genocidal in its ultimate expression. I think it will bring down our civilization if we pursue it.
And time.
Well, I think it's one of the primal sins of identity politics players on the left and the right, just to be clear about that. Personally, since this has got personal at times, I'm no fan of the identitarian right. I think that anybody who plays a game, a conceptual game where group identity comes first and foremost, risks an exacerbation of tribalism. It doesn't matter whether it's on the left or the right.
The right gone too far?
Of course the right has gone too far.
Tell us how.
Well, how about Auschwitz?
And time.
We know what happens when right-wing governments adopt racial superiority doctrines, right? We know what happens. We get an extraordinarily toxic form of tribalism and blood. So that seems like a very bad idea. But I don't like identity politics. I don't care who's playing it. And so the alt-right tends towards identity politics, and I'm for the sovereignty of the individual. And that isn't what you're for if you're an identitarian. You're for the sovereignty of the group.
And time again that he does not like or support the alt-right. So in order to avoid being charged with libel, they go for this logical fallacy approach of, well, if bad people like something, it must be bad. This allows them to dishonestly tie Peterson together with the alt-right without getting sued. But is it even actually true? Does the alt-right actually like Peterson as all these outlets claim? Now this video will be broken into two parts. In the first part, I'll go over the various articles and clips that make the claim that the alt-right loves Peterson, and see if they actually provide any actual evidence for this claim, or if it's all based on conjecture. And in the second part, we'll be going directly to alt-right sources to see what they think about Peterson in their own words. First, let's look at this Slate article. Why is Monsanto inviting this alt-right hero to a fireside chat on farming? What evidence do they provide for this alt-right hero claim? But he is best known for the YouTube channel that has made him a belle of the alt-right, as described in a November 2017 profile in Canada's Maclean's magazine. Ah, perhaps Maclean has the answers we seek in an article titled, "Is Jordan Peterson the stupid man's smart person?" University of Toronto psychology professor Jordan Peterson was in the news this week, and one imagines this makes the university sad. Peterson first made the news and became a belle of the alt-right when in September of 2016 he announced that he would not use a student's preferred pronoun if he were asked to, except that he might if he felt the request was genuine, and no one has asked him that anyway. So Peterson became the belle of the alt-right because he didn't want his government to make compelled speech laws about gender pronouns, something which has no direct relation to the establishment of a white ethno-state. Okay. Now some of you may be saying,
yeah, but Sitch, you're defining the alt-right too narrowly. Typically, the alt-right is also very tradcon socially and are against trans people. Maybe that's why they like Peterson in this instance.
well, I'm defining the alt-right by the thing that makes them unique and noteworthy. There are many groups of people that don't like trans folk. Lots of very religious Christians don't like trans people.
Simply stated, there is no such thing as transgender. You're either XX or XY. That's it. God made man male and female. That is determined genetically. That is physiology. That is science. That is reality.
Why not mention them? What about Hasidic Jews? The ultra-Orthodox ain't exactly down with the LGBT.
My name is Abby Stein, and I identify as a woman of trans experience. Until I was 20, I never, ever mentioned it to anyone, because I lived in a community that is literally the most gender-segregated society in the United States. I came out to my parents on November 10th of 2015. I only got to speak to my father. In my community, it's always the father and the husband who controls the family. It didn't go well, and his final reaction was, I'm not going to be able to talk to you. And I never really got to talk to my mom, so yeah.
Is Peterson the belle of the ultra-Orthodox? What about Louis Farrakhan? He hates Jews and trans folk.
And how the Jews were responsible for all of this filth and degenerate behavior that Hollywood is putting out, turning men into women and women into men.
And he's not a white nationalist. No, silly, he's a black nationalist.
This is the YouTube police. Stop pointing out Louis Farrakhan's bigotry and come out of your mother's basement with your computer off.
And Peterson is far more tame than any of these people. His concern was with the government legislating required speech for gender non-binary pronouns.
Though you don't think that a trans woman is a woman, and do you think that that is what is behind or explains your opposition to this idea of a law mandating you to use a preferred pronoun, is because you don't actually believe that that's the truth, that a trans woman is a woman and therefore you can't use that pronoun?
No, that's not my argument at all.
Really?
Yeah, really. My argument is that the government shouldn't compel voluntary speech.
No, but I know what your argument is, and
no,
you've made it very clearly.
But that's exactly it. There's
the motivation
behind it.
But you don't believe
I wouldn't put
is a
everything
woman.
online in my life to take the stance I did unless I had thought that through very deeply. And I've thought it through very deeply. There aren't hidden motivations that have to do with some arbitrary prejudice against trans people.
Okay.
It's pure and simply this. There's never been a time in English common law history where the government compelled speech, and the Canadian government dared to do that. And that was unacceptable.
No. If the media is going to single out the alt-right versus any other group, then it's only fair that it relates to the very thing that makes them alt-right. The article continues. To be clear, Jordan Peterson is not a neo-Nazi, but there's a reason he's as popular as he is on the alt-right. You'll never hear him use the phrase, "we must secure a future for our white children." What you'll hear him say is that, while there does appear to be a causal relationship between empowering women and economic growth, we have to consider whether this is good for society, because the birth rate is plummeting. Notice the lack of quotes here.
Citation needed.
Praise the Lord.
And the lack of having to do with a white ethno-state, unless perhaps you may think that the birth rates comment is a dog whistle for the fear of being replaced by non-white immigrants, even though Peterson is in favor of immigration.
Now, you want immigrants to come in, especially if they're the sorts of immigrants who are likely to contribute properly to the success of your polity. And lots of immigrants do that. I mean, I think the vast majority, for example, of entrepreneurs in the United States come from the Indian subcontinent. So great, you know, bring them over. They're highly educated, they're extraordinarily productive, they make lots of new businesses, and then they pump money like mad back into India. Good deal.
See? Oh, wait a minute.
But that doesn't mean that we have our arms are open to everyone immigration policy, because it's complete rubbish.
He doesn't call for a white ethno-state, but he does retweet Daily Caller articles with opening lines like, "Yet again an American city is being torn apart by black rioters." He has dedicated 2.5-hour-long YouTube videos to identity politics and the Marxist lie of white privilege. So, a Daily Caller article which does have a pretty stupid opening line, but is actually about the dangers of Marxism, not race. Which a lot of people on YouTube talk about that the alt-right don't like, but of course no evidence is provided on how the alt-right actually feels about Peterson. This is all conjecture based on the author's most uncharitable perception of Peterson. Instead, we see the truth of what the author means when they say, "Belle of the alt-right." What they actually mean is clearly stated in this Vox article. Jordan Peterson, the obscure Canadian psychologist turned right-wing celebrity, explained. The article goes on to talk about Peterson's disdain for Marxism before landing on this. But Peterson's grand theory is brilliant as a political stance, one designed to weaponize the grievances of the kind of young men attracted to the alt-right. Peterson's framework serves as a justification for dismissing the idea of any kind of privilege, white, male, or otherwise, as a tool used by closet Marxists to manipulate you. Peterson's position helps claim the mantle of facts and reason for the anti-PC right. So Belle of the alt-right actually means Peterson is effective at dismantling the radical left illiberal positions. Thus everyone that doesn't like the radical left likes Peterson's dismantling process. And hey, look who's part of the doesn't like the radical left crowd. The alt-right. I guess the title, Jordan Peterson, Belle of everyone who's not an SJW, which technically includes the alt-right as a tiny minority, just doesn't have the greatest ring to it. But perhaps some other articles can shed light on this alt-right liking Peterson claim. Next we have the Vox article titled, "The Intellectual Dark Web Explained: What Jordan Peterson Has in Common with the Alt-Right." A controversial New York Times article describes several popular white intellectuals as marginalized renegades. Of course, the Times article never uses the word marginalized once. No, this language is specifically coded to conjure up the image of an old racist white man, claiming they're the victim because all the uppity non-white races are suddenly demanding equality.
But you're a mean, mad white man, and you're gonna get us right.
But don't take my word for it. The article says as much. The truth is rather that dark web intellectuals, like Donald Trump supporters and the online alt-right, have experienced a sharp decline in their relative status over time. This is leading them to frustration and resentment. This status threat is the author's main justification for comparing Peterson to the alt-right. Of course, no evidence is provided to show that Peterson or his fans fear some sort of status threat based on race.
Great, you know, bring him over.
The Guardian article titled, "How Dangerous is Jordan B. Peterson, the right-wing professor who hid a hornet's nest?" goes on to say, he is adored by figures on the so-called alt-light. Basically, the alt-right without the Sikh Heil and the white ethno-state. Oh, so it's like the alt-right if you remove the defining factor that makes someone alt-right. But again, no evidence is given that the alt-right actually likes Peterson. They simply repeat the Peterson gives them ammunition against SJW's argument. It's true that he's not a white nationalist, says David Newart, the Pacific Northwest correspondent for the Southern Poverty Law Center, but he's buttressing his narrative with pseudo-facts, many of them created for the explicit purpose of promoting white nationalism. No source or citation given, especially the whole notion of cultural Marxism. The arc of radicalization often passes through these more moderate ideologues. So there you have it. Anyone that doesn't agree with the far-left illiberals and is moderate is simply a gateway to the alt-right. And we have even more Guardian articles that make this alt-right claim with no evidence. And this Guardian article calls Peterson the alt-right's favorite psychologist, but it actually has a link. However, clicking it just brings us back to their previous article, the one with no evidence. And here's two more Guardian articles, again providing absolutely no evidence. The Independent also has multiple articles making the same claim that the alt-right likes Peterson, but again with no evidence. And even this Slate article that doesn't compare Peterson to the alt-right still puts alt-right in the tags. The Daily Dot is one of the most egregious examples. They give no evidence for anything, of course, but claim they have mind-reading dog-whistling powers and can see the true purpose of Peterson's words. Peterson is careful to not explicitly align himself with fascist, but it isn't a giant intellectual leap from Peterson's words to the actions in Charlottesville. How does one toughen up, if not through violence?
What the fuck are you talking about, man?
I think this is one of those situations that reveals more about the person writing the criticism than the intended subject. He says he is not of the alt-right, but he has said if men are pushed too hard to feminize, they will become more and more interested in harsh fascist political ideology. So Jordan Peterson warning you not to do the thing that will create more fascist is somehow him dog-whistling in favor of fascist. Yet for all these works of journalism, very few even attempt to provide any evidence for this claim that the alt-right loves Jordan Peterson. I found only two pieces of evidence pointed to in the media. The first is this.
Because I also found this picture of you with behind the pet. That is that you? I mean, it's you, but I mean that's an actual photo of you. You did that?
Yeah.
So this is the Pepe flag.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm sure you know is seen by the left as a hate symbol, and
well, the left sees all sorts of things as hate symbols.
But it's used by the extreme right as a way of spreading messages. It's seen as an alt-right symbol. This is an alt-right hand symbol. Here you are.
It's mostly used by young men who are poking and causing trouble on social media. That's mostly what it's used for.
Now, Peterson tries to explain that Pepe is, or was, more of a troll symbol above anything else. I say was because Pepe is a dead meme now.
I did an oopsie.
But the reporter is having none of it.
I did a video online called The Metaphysics of Pepe with Jonathan Pajot, who's an Orthodox carver of icons. And if people are interested in my views on what's happening with this particular symbol and why it's occurring, then there's a 2-hour discussion about that.
Richard Spencer wears he's a white supremacist. He wears the Pepe symbol.
Even bringing up the OK hand sign as an alt-right hand symbol. I guess she's oblivious to the fact that 4chan created a fake association between the OK hand symbol and the alt-right in order to see if the media would fall for it, which of course they did. Oh, come on. Even the Independent and ADL were able to sniff that one out. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter that in the very picture, there's a Jewish guy wearing a yarmulke right there. Hey buddy, you better watch out. There's some Nazi shenanigans going on right behind you. Get out of there. I don't know, maybe he's not Jewish. Maybe he's a Catholic priest. And maybe the alt-right people in this picture didn't care that the event they were attending featured a Jew and a not white person as speakers. Let's just put all that aside. They're probably alt-righters based on a picture of this meme.
Hello, Professor Peterson. My name is Alex Van Ham, and I'm the journalist that published the photo of you, myself, and another person holding a Pepe flag. Because you were questioned about it on CBC yesterday, I would like to send you this personal message so that you can understand the context of the picture and who I am in case you are questioned about it again in the future. I do not know if you remember, but I took that photo last June after being a guest speaker at the Canadian Freedom Summit, which you headlined. That night I spoke of being an individualist and rejected identity politics. Afterwards, in the VIP area for the event, a colleague of mine presented a Pepe flag, and he and I asked you for a picture with it. I had heard you speak of Pepe on the Joe Rogan podcast, as well as your conversation with Jonathan Pajot, so I knew you understood that it is not a hate symbol. That night I was very excited to meet you, and having just spoken to a large audience about my rejection of identity politics, I thought it would be alright to take that picture. I want you to know that I am not a white supremacist, a white nationalist, a racist, or a reprehensible person. I would add that I am the grandson of a still-living World War II American combat veteran, and my significant other is not a white person. It is absolutely absurd to imply that I am a Nazi, because I certainly am not. The left understand that language is a powerful tool, essential for power games, and I refuse to give them the power to control symbols like Pepe, or label people such as myself a Nazi simply for disagreeing with them. That is why I posted that photo. I suppose it was an act of rebellion against the radical left.
Well, I guess that piece of evidence has been refuted. The only other piece of evidence that I've found for the claim that the alt-right loves Peterson that the media has produced is here.
Why do you think it is that so much of what you say is so very popular with the alt-right?
It isn't. And you don't have any evidence for that at all. Any more than the evidence that alt-right people
Daily
watch this
Stormer,
show.
Neonite website,
that's the
Saviour
one
of
I'm going
Western
on.
Civilization.
So what's he talking about? He's referencing this article by The Forward, an article that received so much pushback that not only did they have to change the cover image comparing Peterson to Hitler, but 2 days later, The Forward released a counter article that refuted the original article. So what did this hit piece on Peterson say in regards to our question? Jordan Peterson is a public intellectual adored by neo-Nazis, white supremacist, and conspiracy theorist. The neo-Nazi website, The Daily Stormer, called Peterson a Canadian psychology professor turned self-help guru, the savior of Western civilization. So there you have it. The Daily Stormer called Jordan Peterson the savior of Western civilization. Proof, right? Well, Peterson said in response to this,
Oh, well, that was all taken apart today by a number of Jewish publications, by the way, showing that, first of all, that was all satirical commentary on the part of the alt-right, directed at taking me down, for example. And there was an alt-right article yesterday published saying that I was a Jewish stooge and shill.
Perhaps he was referring to this Weekly Standard article that said, wondering the actual extent of Peterson's support at the Daily Stormer, I looked up the savior reference and discovered it's in a vague 3-sentence blog post written by a guy calling himself Joe Jones. It turns out that he is likely being ironic about praising Peterson as the Messiah, because just a month before his ambiguous savior comment, he wrote, Jordan Peterson is a
bundle of sticks,
and his fans are also
motorcycle enthusiasts.
One of his other posts is titled, Jordan Peterson fans are massive with daddy issues. Well, that doesn't exactly sound like a ringing endorsement for the Messiah of Western civilization, but how do we know that Mr. Cohen's interpretation is correct? Perhaps we have to look ourselves. So let's get the FBI to start watching my internet activity by checking the Daily Stormer for ourselves. Jordan Peterson asked to answer the Jewish question. I can't do it. This is the same pretentious, smarmy who banned Faith Golty from a speaking event. When he was asked about that, he went into a gay little tizzy while faking a cool composure. What could the coward Peterson say other than, I am a coward? Here's the plan, boys. Get tickets to this man's show by any means necessary and press him on the question. Ask him why it is that he can't do it when it comes to the Jewish question, but is somehow able to claim intellectual honesty. Call him out as a charlatan who is making millions off of feeding basic simple truths to kids who are starving for any truth at all, while purposely hiding from them the most important truths of what we are facing as a civilization. Blood sports. Medicare debates Jordan Peterson supporting cuck. Jordan Peterson is a and his fans are also Based Frenchman deconstructs Jordan Peterson's cucking. Mr. Medicare on snake oiling selling Canuck, Jordan Peterson. Peterson is full of shit, no matter how you slice it. He is getting rich off your low self-esteem. Anything good he says is just obvious stuff he ripped off of someone else. Jordan Peterson fans are massive with daddy issues. Jordan Peterson is a retarded cuck, with a following of other retarded cucks with daddy issues. Jordan B. Peterson finally drops mask and endorses alt-right white power politics. Oh wait, looks like someone at the Daily Stormer really does like him. I was on the fence about Peterson for a while. His recent boomer sprung out over Twitter had me doubting the guy. Those who have accomplished something as an individual feel no need to be proud of their race, and for those who are anti-Semites, it just proves that you like your minorities unsuccessful. You know what's amazing? How seldom you hear someone say, "That wasn't real Nazism." Real cultural appropriation, that's when someone is proud of his culture despite having done nothing to support it, extend it, or transform it, a message to the far right. But then I remembered that he totally trolled some SJWs that one time, and I realized that I was overreacting. Clearly not calling someone by their preferred gender pronouns makes him a living martyr and beyond criticism. Oh wait, never mind, he's just being sarcastic. No, but real talk, his diehard fans are a bunch of millennial and boomer tards. He sells them some snake oil self-help program. It has been said before, but it's worth saying again, this man is simply acting out of the father figure role to a single parent generation. He's a father to the millennials and a fellow cuck boomer to other boomers. No one was asking Peterson to go full fash here, but he went above and beyond the call of Zog by bashing white people and sucking Jewish dick.
Loving you is more than just a dream come true.
7-hour video on why Jordan Peterson is a piece of shit. Wait. J, race is real, so we need a white ethnostate F, made a 7-hour and 30-minute video complaining about Peterson?
What the fuck?
Yes, from all this we can really see that it seems like the Daily Stormer just loves Jordan Peterson. But hey, they posted another sarcastic piece feigning support of him. So how is anyone supposed to know that this troll site is not being serious? Well, the group CAMERA, the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting in America, had this to say. "We closely monitor white supremacist media," said CAMERA analyst Dexter Van Zyl, who himself has been the target of white nationalist attacks. My colleague, Jonan Cohen, quickly proved that forward journalist Ari Feldman misled readers that Peterson has support among far-right racist communities. The exact opposite is the case, said Van Zyl. Neo-Nazis and white nationalists vehemently hate Jordan Peterson. It's a demonstrable fact. On behalf of CAMERA, Van Zyl has sent 2 formal letters to forward editor Jane Eisner asking that the magazine acknowledge that Peterson is loathed by Jew haters, neo-Nazis, and white nationalists. And I guess the forward found this information compelling enough that they actually removed that Daily Stormer line from the article. Now if you look at the article, that line has been replaced with, "Jordan Peterson is a public intellectual adored by white supremacists and conspiracy theorists. The white nationalist sympathizer known as Sargon of Akkad has expressed love of Peterson's work." Oh, I see what happens when someone proves you wrong. You don't remove the claim, you just remove the wrong evidence of the claim and provide either no evidence or just make something up. Because, ah yes, Sargon, the guy that has debated against the alt-right several times.
I mean, if you want to write an article or something, I would love to know. I genuinely want to know what it is someone has to do to be white in your conception of white.
I've actually already addressed this.
Right, no, you've ignored it and you've obfuscated.
I haven't
ignored
it.
There
are different conceptions. Do you acknowledge differences between different races and cultures, Sargon?
That doesn't change.
Or no, you just
me isn't European innovation, Richard. Whether I do or don't, it won't make it different.
Like
you just can't answer.
It doesn't matter. Why are we even It doesn't even matter. There's going to be a change of consciousness.
Look.
It's not based on
Millennial Wolves. Thanks for being
here. Your points are just so
annoying. Consciousness, Richard,
are going to be is a fundamental change of consciousness that is going to give everyone to this new order.
And has publicly stated time and time again that he doesn't support them.
It's the same brand of racial, religious, and nationalist tribalism that is practiced in the regressive left, except that it's approached from the opposite direction. Honestly, this is why I hate dealing with the alt-right, because it is literally filled with low IQ betas, and all they do is spam comment sections.
And the alt-right has made pretty clear that they don't support him.
I'm so offended. Oh no, the alt-right have got a meme of me. But the white genocide is still happening, it's real and it's a good thing. And you're part of it. The alt-right, I think, is probably entirely responsible for white genocide. And so I'm just doing it until they just stop fucking atting me. Daily reminder, the alt-right is full of virgin cucks who will ultimately doom the white race because of their low IQ and inability to breed. P.S. Hi, Tara.
You're saying you're not suspended, you're banned from Twitter, permanently?
Yeah, I am. I got into arguments with the alt-right. And I was just explaining to them that the Holocaust happened, that Nazism is bad, and for some reason Jack Dorsey decided to permanently ban me from Twitter for targeted harassment of the alt-right. Not sure why. I'm amazed that they're so sympathetic to the alt-right, and but what are you going to do?
Wait, you might be the only person in the history of mankind to get banned from Twitter for offending the alt-right. How does this... There's got to be more to the story. Did you send them naked pictures or something?
Not this time.
No.
Yes, he is totally a white nationalist sympathizer. In fact, Sargon even debated Andrew Eglin, the founder of the aforementioned Daily Stormer.
No, I don't want to take anybody's rights away, Sargon.
Of course you do.
Sargon.
Okay,
no,
now,
I don't.
Now I think you're not being honest. Andrew, you've got on your website, you've got race war and the Jewish problem. Come on, don't lie to me. Don't pretend that you can.
No, I'm not lying.
I did an in-depth video deconstructing their debate, link in the description, that apparently was so spicy, YouTube had to age-gate it.
So your morality is a form of justification of Muslim rape gangs.
That's a good hot take, Andrew.
Well, I mean, that's what it is, man. I mean, you can't really, you can laugh, but what you're saying is I am...
So be sure to check it out after this video. So the Daily Stormer supporting Peterson meme has been thoroughly debunked, which means the media has provided no evidence that the alt-right loves Jordan Peterson. But perhaps there are other alt-right sources we can investigate for ourselves. Why not start with Richard Spencer, the supposed creator of the alt-right, and his official website? So does he and his cohorts like Peterson?
No.
In fact, the alt-right website says the exact opposite of the standard SJW line about Peterson and the alt-right. Jordan Peterson goes full shill and counter-signals white identity. The radical centrist strikes again. I've written about Jordan Peterson before, and my description of him wasn't exactly flattering. To take pride in one's heritage is immoral, at least according to him and the other great individualist thinkers of our time, Paul Joseph Watson, Sargon of Mossad, or say Ben Shapiro. What else is there to say about these people except that they're dangerous to say the least, and not as much of a gateway to us as some alt-righters like to think. If anything, they are gatekeepers and speed bumps that allow people to take the easy way out of confronting the social malaise of our times. They're halfway rest stops that allow people turned off by the rabid SJW left to counter-signal their opposition in a comfortable way and without embracing white identity. Wow. So Spencer's alt-right website is literally complaining that Peterson is correct when he says,
Many people write me from the right or from the fringes of the radical right, saying precisely that listening to my lectures stopped them from going all the way.
From a strategic point of view, we should thank our lucky stars for the fact that insane and polarizing SJWs exist and spend their time tearing into these radical centrists, skeptics, enlightened individualists, or whatever they like to call themselves, instead of the people who create new alt-right recruits every single day. Balkanization helps our cause and undermines the soft, squishy, let's all get along center. Hey, look at that, mainstream media and radical left-wing illiberals. The alt-right is actually thrilled that you're wasting your time going after people like Peterson and Sargon. So I guess using your earlier logic, that would make you the belle of the alt-right. But it doesn't end there. They have lots more hate on for Jordan Peterson. By the way, he makes me cringe. Let's be real for a second, I've tried to listen to his lectures and I've managed to glean some insight from them, but most of it is really pretty basic bitch tier. Jordan Potterson and the cucks of Kanakistan. Jordan Peterson has well played the pinata recently for the alt-right. Peterson said, once you determine to play the identity game, you benefit in a number of ways. You can claim responsibility for the accomplishments of your group you feel racially or ethnically akin to without actually having to accomplish anything yourself. This notion is not, of course, limited to Peterson. It runs through a certain strain of libertarianism today and emerges, it would seem, from the viewpoint of people such as Sargon of Akkad and the rest of the so-called skeptics. Jordan Peterson versus Faith Goldie Cuckfest.
Oh, I just want a world and when everything's fair. Jordan Peterson, like, well, one shouldn't be proud of things that what ancestors. That is, I mean, he's Canadian, so I don't want to, he's kind of has the almost right, maybe even duty to be goofy and boring.
But maybe that's still not good enough for you. I mean, that was only the altright.com and the Daily Stormer. Surely there's some white nationalists somewhere that just love Jordan Peterson. What about this alt-right website, which has a slightly different URL than Richard Spencer's, where they're reclaiming their heritage? Mega cuck Jordan Peterson supports Jewish supremacy. Ezra Levant confirms Peterson's closest allies are Jews. The recent denunciation of Peterson is a double fake by various factions of Jews.
That Serbian Jew double bluff, and it ain't gonna work on me, heh heh heh.
Far-left Jews will label Peterson far-right, alt-right, a Nazi enabler, etc., which gives him some street cred among genuine alt-righters. This distracts attention from the fact that Peterson is philo-Semitic, controlled opposition surrounded by Jews, hence why he fiercely defends the Jews and their hold on power. In any case, this is an example of Jews controlling all sides of the debate with their hand-selected spokesmen who, following their Jewish script, dutifully avoid any discussion of Jewish influence and its negative impact. Was Jordan Peterson hand-selected by Jewish TV producers to lead dissent? Our good friend Jordan Peterson, also known as Hermit the Frog, has come under increasing scrutiny from the alt-right for his maniacal cucking on the Jewish question. Peterson has numerously defended Jewish overrepresentation in power, hypothesizing that the phenomenon comes down to their higher average IQ as opposed to insider nepotism, which carries more weight in the alt-right intellectual sphere. A Reddit user has dug up an excerpt from the foreword of Peterson's book, 12 Rules of Life. They dug up something that was publicly available, which relates how a Canadian Jewish TV producer named Wodek Sesenberg hand-selected Peterson to be a public intellectual. Wodek, a producer for the popular Canadian public affairs show The Agenda, is said to be the first to put Peterson in front of a camera after recognizing his gift of the gab. While this is not rock-solid proof of an organized Jewish conspiracy to elevate Peterson into his current guru role, it shows that Peterson was groomed by a Jewish television producer to lead public dissent against the radical left, lead it astray into the Jew-friendly dead end of classical liberalism. So there you have it, proof that the alt-right doesn't love Jordan Peterson.
Please, sir, I want some more.
What? What? Ask for more?
Jordan Peterson speechless when confronted on Jewish question. Alt-light gatekeeper Jordan Peterson, he is raking in the Patreon beta bucks by telling people that free speech is good and that SJWs are insane, things any rational person can observe for themselves. These classical liberal cucks have found a niche marketing in feigning mild opposition to out-of-control social justice warriors. Peterson is a cowardly disgrace. By siphoning off potential support for the alt-right and redirecting it to Jew-friendly individualist ideologies, this classic liberal clique does Jewery's work to defend the right-wing backlash to globalism, leftism, and the multicultural experiment. Countercurrents Publishing called him a Canadian charlatan. Jordan Peterson's rejection of identity politics allows white ethnocide. Jordan Peterson is a postmodernist critic of white identitarians. History Reviewed, which, when I clicked on their website, gave me this little pop-up. Free ebook! Did 6 million Jews really die in World War II? Huh, what a tough question. Because the answer is yes. Canada, Jewish-controlled opposition. Jordan Peterson is a piece of shit. He might be a Jew in disguise. That we're very likely dealing even with a Jew in disguise, and no way in hell is this guy anywhere near our values. I will discuss Peterson later, but my firm view is, this is a piece of shit and very possibly a Jew in disguise. Yeah, it's always amazes me when people talk about how you should use Peterson as an entry-level red pill on people you know. He still believes in equality and other such bullshit. We've had quite a few shitting up the board from experience over the past years, really. Jordan Peterson bows to the powers that be and has grown wealthy in the process. He is a sort of rebel that multicultural elites like, one who participates in their censorship of those who would reveal the power of these elites and their hostility to Western people and culture. And what about alternative hypothesis?
And you coming in here and saying, oh, that's just you playing their game. Listen, asshole, it's called existence and survival, and the only one playing games here is you.
And I've always decided against it because it seemed to me that the proper level of analysis.
And what about Vox Day? How does he feel about Jordan Peterson?
Peterson's philosophy, which I call Jordanetics, is ultimately anti-Christian, it's poisonous, and it's riddled from start to finish with mental illness. I mean, he is what happens when you cross Bill Kristol with L. Ron Hubbard and give it a PhD.
Absolutely. Please keep breaking it down because, man, I started looking at video of him with close up in his eyes, and you can't fake that. I mean, he looks like he is wound up.
Well, Jordanetics was created to replace the failure of the new atheism and the neoliberal world order. But the reality is that he is actively attempting to try to keep the right from moving too far right. Actively attempting to try to keep the right from moving too far right. What he is attempting to do is he is attempting to provide an alternative to the growing number of people who want a return to the values of 1950s America, who want to return to the values of white Christian America.
And they know that wave is unstoppable, so they're going to hijack it with a new watered-down, controlled opposition to then grab all that momentum in a judo move and steal it, and then once they've got control, use that wave to crush the real movement.
Well, I think that's the plan.
Wait, I finally found an alt-right blogger who likes Jordan Peterson. And even he says, a lot of the alt-right has a big problem with Peterson. These guys are like 2 steps above soy boys. They're just dudes. And even he has written in the opposite. I have written several times in favor of Jordan Peterson. Despite this, much of the alt-right has decided they don't much like him. He recently wrote a post addressing the so-called Jewish question. I wrote a fairly cucky post on the JQ, but not as cucky as him. The unfortunate part about his philosophy appears that he actually believes it. He will tell whites not to act as a collective, as the rest of the world acts cohesively on identity. Peterson has no interest in the alt-right or its more controversial truths. He has an interest in stopping identity politics and fringe leftism. We are still waiting for our true champion. So there you have it. Does the alt-right just love and adore Peterson?
No.
Not at all. I'm sure some people in response will try to dredge up someone somewhere from the alt-right, supporting Peterson for his self-help message or just on the basis of the enemy of my enemy. But that doesn't matter.
Hey, you're wasting your time. Go ahead, dig it up. I don't give a shit.
Because the claim that many in the media have continually made is not all the big names in the alt-right don't like Peterson, but some alt-right supporters like Peterson anyways. No. They claim the alt-right loves Peterson, that he is their favorite, their belle. And this proves that's demonstrably untrue. But just as it's completely unfair for some media outlets to label Peterson in this way, it would be unfair of me to label all media outlets as participating in this behavior. There are many mainstream media outlets, even ones critical of Peterson, that do not resort to such tactics. In fact, it's not unusual to see different journalists in the same publication have 2 completely differing ideas on Jordan Peterson. Remember, it was the New York Times that both published Barry Weiss's intellectual dark web piece and one of the most ridiculous hit jobs on Peterson. Each organization is not a monolith, and even though it's easy for us to see the world in these black and white terms, as many of the authors of these articles have, we must always strive to understand the often complex nature of the world and judge people based on their individual behavior, not on the group.
The idea of group rights is extraordinarily problematic because the obverse of the coin of individual rights is individual responsibilities. And you can hold an individual responsible, and an individual can be responsible. And so that's partly why individuals have rights. But groups, how do you hold a group responsible? I mean, the whole idea is it's not a good idea to hold a group responsible. First of all, it flies in the face of the idea of the sort of justice systems that we've laid out in the West that are essentially predicated first on the assumption of individual innocence, but also on the possibility of individual guilt, not group guilt. We saw what happened in the 20th century many, many times when the idea of group guilt was enabled to get a foothold, let's say, in the polity and in the justice system. It was absolutely catastrophic.
I hope we didn't just, butt heads the whole time.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
These aren't straightforward issues, and they're going to cause some heat and noise when they're ironed out. Conversations don't have to be easy to be worthwhile.